I have a new tent, the ALTO TR2. So this is the two-person version of the tent, and it only weighs 1.3 kilos. What it gives you, obviously being a two-person tent, and also the nature of the architecture of the tent, is it gives plenty of volume. And I think for a 3-season tent, that's generally what I'm certainly looking for when you're living on the trail. 4-season, you actually want the opposite. You want it as really small as possible, because you're reliant on your body heat to actually warm the tent up. So yeah, I've gone for a two-person tent, and I believe the weight to volume ratio is about right. The way in which the tent is put together in terms of how it's packed. Now it has these hooks here, and as you'll see, it's a case of just unhooking them. I think from a one-person perspective, I'll probably get rid of those. But I do like, obviously, the fact of having separate bags for the inner and the outer. And I tend to put the fly sheet always in a separate tent bag, and particularly a stuff sack that it's waterproof. I do find that when I'm repacking the fly sheet, particularly when it's wet, it's actually, the volume, I believe, is just slightly too much for this particular bag. So I will be replacing it, but that is quite normal for all the tents I have. So I'll get to the poles first. Now the tent bag of the poles can be opened at either end. Now they do say, and I do actually use it, is that the pole bag can be used as a light diffuser, and they refer to it as the light bar. I'll show you that later on. So the poles are a reasonable package length. Goes in my rucksack easily enough, or along the side of my rucksack. My rucksack's relatively small, so it's going to fit the majority of rucksacks, no problem at all. The poles are the DAC poles, and they're perfectly lightweight and connected in the usual elasticated way. Thing is the pegs and peg bag. There's 10 pegs, which we'll come to in a minute. The bag has got like a separate compartment for the guy ropes and the repair kit, which comes as standard. The pegs, I think there's 10 of them, and this is the standard peg. I'm not necessarily a big fan of these pegs. They're perfectly okay in the sense of they're 7 grams, so it's reasonably light, kind of aircraft aluminium, good quality stuff. Got the pull on it as well, which is always helpful. But I'm always, why do we have to have pegs grey? They're always so difficult to spot when they're in the ground. Wouldn't be so bad if that was maybe an orange pull. So I've tended to got them mixed in with some pegs I got from another tent, actually my 4-season tent, and use these for the corner pegs. So now we have the inner tent. So the tent is described as being semi-freestanding. What that actually means is that you need to peg in at least one particular end. At that point it does become freestanding if you attach the poles, but if you're going to start pegging, you might as well peg all 4 corners and then put the poles in. So let's get started. So one thing I've learned from doing this particular tent a few times is making sure I've got the ratio here correct, because later on I'll be using that to pull down on the system and make it tighter. But it is great in that way. So you can see here I can just tighten that as much as I want to. And this here is going to be where the tent pole goes in. And in fact, I'll attach the first one now to there. So they do talk about the poles being colour coordinated to the actual connections here. So you can see green to green. Later on at the far end, we will see we've got grey to grey. So simple as that. So you can see grey to grey. So the first thing to note is making sure that this is almost going the opposite direction to what you possibly initially envisaged from a normal tent. And then I find it's best getting this piece on next before we do the other ones. So yeah, get that clipped on, then these come next. So now we're attaching the ridge pole to the inner tent. And what you'll note here as well is that there's a green attachment and at this side a grey attachment, and they're colour coordinated to where they connect on the fly sheet. Now one of the tricks I have learned is it's easier to put the light bar up once you've got the tent this way rather than putting it up from inside. It's a lot quicker and a lot easier. And in fact, the other thing is it reminded me why there's two openings in the tent pole pack. It's so you can get your hand inside to put both ends connector in, like a press stud effect. So, as you can see, there's tons of space. In fact, it's a real luxury. Every time I'm in this tent, I can't believe how much headroom and shoulder space I have. Yeah, so much space. I believe all tents will go this way eventually. Just having that bar the opposite way gives so much bigger impact. And there's no extra weight in terms of that particular pole. So yeah, why aren't all tents designed this way? So that's the space for one person, and that would be the space for a second person. And I actually think that's a reasonable size. So the great thing is everything has got multi-use. Sleeping bag and inner bag, pillow bag, so I don't lose anything. There are mesh pockets on either side, although I have to say that's one criticism I have of them. They're not great. I do wonder if they should have been put at the other end. So you can see there's plenty of room for my size 10 footprint on top of my sleeping mat. Right, let's get the fly sheet on now. So one of the criticisms I have of the fly sheet is that I mentioned before that these are colour coded, so that's green, and on the other side it's grey. And you have to make sure the green side obviously connects to the green side, which in this instance you discover from this here. But when you first get the fly sheet out, you have no way of telling which way round it is. You're learning time that tension ridge here is actually the green side, but it doesn't tell you that anywhere. Like I say, it's experience. So then we attach it. It's relatively simple enough. I just usually grab that and just put it over there like that. Initially that needs a bit of practice. And then you just peg out like you would a normal fly sheet, except where it's near the poles. So where the poles are, the fly sheet just clips on like so. And to make it easy, make sure you have plenty of hair. You can tighten off later on by just pulling that down. So the tent comes with 4 guy ropes, and they have these little boomerangs on, which obviously is appropriate for an Australian company. And then you just feed them through like this. Easy enough to get on and off. I will probably tend to leave my guy ropes attached permanently, so I may just tie them on. It just saves a bit of faff. So in terms of condensation control, we have the vents here. So here's the air vents. It's 2-way zip. Can be done from the inside and the outside. You can see. I find that's pretty extensive. However, I have found that the rain can collect here. And so when you get up in the morning, there might be a pool of rain here. However, up till now, it's not soaked through. And obviously I just kind of let this come down a bit and it rolls off. As you can see, the door area is really pretty big. Oh, so easy to get in and out. So the vestibule area, I believe, is pretty good. You could definitely stand up or lie down 2 rucksacks in there. And room for your shoes as well. And that works quite well as a cooking arrangement in terms of having wind protection from either door. And I can bring in the door even closer if I need to. Then we have the light bar. You have to admit, that nearly looks like a fluorescent light. So I'm sure you can see there is a ton of head and shoulder space here. It doesn't matter which way I turn. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of it. I can't get over how much room there is in this tent. It is a real luxury after being used to my 4-season tent. Different purposes, but nonetheless, I think if you're going to spend some time in a tent, this is the one you need. I think it's a great tent. I absolutely love the weight to volume ratio. It's the thing that sold it for me. There are little quirks. I'm sure version 2, version 3, it'll get even better. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.